are obvious risks in life. Touching a hot stove, driving too fast, spending money you don't have. And then there are quieter risks, the kind that look like politeness, like kindness, like being agreeable, the risk of apologizing for existing. Welcome back. Today, I want to talk about the risk of self-erasure, especially for girls and women with ADHD. Because the most dangerous patterns don't always look dangerous when they start. Sometimes they look charming. Last weekend, my daughter and I drove to a nearby town to enjoy one of the first warm days we've had in months. There was a sidewalk sale in the downtown, charming boutiques, friendly shop owners, that particular kind of small town hum that feels like relief after a long winter. We didn't need anything. We weren't shopping for a purpose. We were wandering. She is my favorite person on the planet. She is witty, whip smart, deeply funny, and profoundly humble. Having a daughter has been the greatest gift of my life. Watching her grow, especially knowing her brain works like mine, is both awe-inspiring and sobering. As we were heading toward the ice cream shop for a sugar boost before our 45-minute drive home, we stopped at one last outdoor table. They were selling pencil sets engraved with sayings based on your astrological sign. As an Aries, I could spot myself immediately. Near perfection. I could have easily gone pro. I always know what I'm doing. For my next trick, and my personal favorite, unfinished projects pencil. That one made me laugh out loud. My daughter's set was different, but equally aligned with her personality. And then I saw the one that hit a little too close to home. I'm sorry I keep saying I'm sorry. We both laughed immediately because we've been working on that habit since she was little. She apologizes for everything, for asking a question, for clarifying a thought, for taking up space in a conversation, for bumping into the wall that bumped into her. Over the years, I've reassured her hundreds of times. You don't have to apologize for that. You're allowed to say what you mean. You're okay. She's improved tremendously. But sometimes she still trips over herself to say sorry before she even finishes her sentence. We bought 2 packs of the pencils because we both love a good writing tool and because humor makes truth easier to hold. But that phrase stayed with me. I'm sorry I keep saying I'm sorry. It sounds cute on a pencil. It doesn't look cute long term. When you grow up with ADHD, especially as a girl, you internalize correction early. Too loud, too emotional, too distracted, too intense, too much. Even when no one says those exact words, you feel them. So you soften, you adjust, you apologize. You begin to assume that if something feels off, you're the one misreading it. That is where the risk lives. Because when you don't trust your own perception, you override it. And when you override it often enough, you'll lose access to it. An unnecessary apology may seem harmless, but over time it morphs. It becomes staying quiet when something feels wrong, accepting behavior that makes you uncomfortable, overgiving to earn approval, confusing endurance with strength. If that pattern isn't interrupted with positive affirmation, with consistent reminders that you are allowed to trust your own thoughts and opinions, it compounds. And compounded self-doubt is harmful. ADHD-related demoralization thrives in that soil. Because when you already question your executive function, your memory, your emotional regulation, it doesn't take much for you to question your judgment too. And if you can't trust your judgment, you become easier to influence, easier to persuade, easier to use. I look back at my own life and see how often I defaulted to compliance instead of objection. Not because I was weak, because I had already internalized that I was wrong more often than I was right. So when something felt uncomfortable, I assumed it was my interpretation that needed correction, not the situation. That's the long-term version of, I'm sorry I keep saying I'm sorry. It becomes, I must be overreacting. I probably misunderstood. I don't want to cause a problem. The risk isn't just emotional, it's relational, professional, financial, psychological. It shapes who you align yourself with. It shapes what you tolerate. It shapes how much of yourself you give away. That's why I buy the pencils and laugh. But I also pay attention because I don't want my daughter growing up into a woman who apologizes for clarity. I want her to know you are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to disagree. You are allowed to trust your instincts. You are allowed to object. Not aggressively, not defensively, confidently. The world does not need her smaller. It needs her intact. Every human shares two fixed points, birth and death. Everything in between is unrepeatable. No one's brain is identical. No one's path is linear. We talk about these things, the over-apologizing, the self-doubt, the adjustment, not because we want to dwell in the negative, but because naming them lowers the risk. Silence protects patterns. Awareness disrupts them. Walking through life with objections, calm, grounded objections, is not selfish. It is protection. It is dignity. It is self-trust. And it ensures that I'm sorry I keep saying I'm sorry stays a joke on a pencil, not a lifelong script. I'll be back soon. Until then, give yourself grace. You've been listening to Demoralized with Molly Kellogg-Schmauch.